Well, good evening. This is Minister April, coming to you guys all over social media. Getting ready to dabble into a little Bible study tonight. We're actually going to talk about one of my favorite characters in the Bible, Joseph. Joseph went through so many things, but one thing I love about Joseph, he showed us what to do when we're waiting. So that is the subject of this Bible study tonight, is what to do when you're in the waiting period. For those of you who aren't familiar with the story of Joseph, basically in Genesis 39, 1 through 23, it tells us after the period of when his brothers sold him. They sold him into slavery, so to speak. He was bought by a man named Potiphar. He was, he did everything in Potiphar's house. He took care of everything. He was like Potiphar's right-hand man, so to speak. Well, Potiphar's wife loved him. She was in love with Joseph. But Joseph, being the faithful man of God that he was, he did not budge when it came to anything that she said. So, of course, when there's something that we want we can't have, a lot of us tend to, or others might tend to lie. So Joseph was lied on, which in turn threw Joseph into prison. He was thrown into prison because of her lie. But it was all a part of the process that God needed him to go through in order for him to get to where he needed to be. This was the beginning of his waiting period. In a sense, his waiting period started once, right after he had the dream of him being in authority and his brothers bowing down to him. So if you want to find out more about that, definitely read Genesis. It goes in detail about Joseph's life, but what we're focusing on is Genesis 39, 1 through 23. It tells about the ordeal. It tells about him being in prison. It goes into how he, deciphered dreams for two individuals. But we're going to take a look at four different aspects of his waiting period. What did he do while he was waiting? The first thing that came to mind was the fact that he remained faithful. Didn't matter how it looked, didn't matter what was going on, because he never gave up on God. Never, not one time. This young man, he was sold into slavery by his blood. He was lied on. He was thrown into prison, and he still remained faithful. A lot of times, so many of us, it takes a little thing and it'll shake us. And we're like, I give up on God. I ain't got time for that. I'm tired of waiting. Look at Joseph. Look at everything he's been through. I'm not saying none of us haven't been through the things that he has, but in a sense, it's the littlest thing and it'll throw us off our course and we won't be faithful. But all it takes is just being faithful. The faith of a mustard seed can do tremendous things in your life. And Joseph, he was faithful. I know there were times he got angry, he got upset, but above all, he had a foundation with God that allowed him to continue to be faithful. So a house that stands on its foundation, that has a strong foundation, it doesn't matter what goes on with that house. The house is going to stay there. Sometimes you might ride down the street and be like, wow, that house is still just standing because the foundation is secure. Joseph's foundation was secure in God to the point that he remained faithful regardless of what happened. It didn't matter what happened, Joseph remained faithful. So that's a key in the waiting process, what to do while you're waiting. Number one is to remain faithful. Secondly, one thing that we see that Joseph did, he was consistent. He was consistent. A lot of times when we're in the waiting period, when things are good, we're good. But when things are bad, we want to curse God. We want to, I can't do this anymore. We want to give up. Our words are not consistent. Our actions are not consistent. We say one thing and do another. It's like we're bipolar spiritually in a sense, because we're here one day, we're there the next day, we're straddling the fence. I don't know what to do because I know what God told me to do, and I know I'm not where I need to be or where he has for me to be, but I'm not where I used to be. So it's like we got a bipolar mentality when it comes to spiritual things or our spiritual life, our relationship with Christ. We tend to be bipolar in a sense. We're not consistent in our actions. No matter what Joseph went through, the lies, the prison, he was consistently a faithful man of God to the point that he got favor. How many people can go to prison and the warden, hey, you know what? I like him. He's about to be my right-hand man. How many can say that? But because of his faithfulness, he was able to get favor. And it wasn't just his faithfulness, it was the fact that he was consistent. There were so many other prisoners in that prison, but that warden seen Joseph. He seen his daily walk with God. And he said, you know what? I want him to help me in this prison. And because of that, that opened up the door for other things to happen to Joseph while he was in prison. Okay? Another thing, Joseph persevered. It did not matter what it looked like. He didn't give up. He did not give up, even when it looked like things were not going to happen for him. And a lot of times we'll get shaken, or we'll want to give up. We don't persevere. The Bible says, do not grow weary in well-doing, because we will reap if we faint not. But so many of us are caught up in the fainting phase, where we want to faint, we want to give up. Do you honestly think anything that is good that comes to you is given to you because you give up? It doesn't work like that. Just imagine if Joseph had given up. If Joseph had given up, we wouldn't have Moses. We wouldn't have the lineage that gave us Christ. Even though Christ wasn't a direct descendant of Joseph, it was things that catapulted from Joseph's life that opened the door for other men of God in the Bible, other women of God in the Bible. His story is very significant because it shows the fact that no matter what is going on in your life, if you persevere, you will reap the reward. So that's what we got to learn from Joseph. Was it easy? No. This young man, all this stuff started happening to him at the age of 17. Some of us are in our 40s and 50s, and we can't even be faithful for a week, let alone a few years. Once Joseph, what happened is, another part of the text is when he deciphers the dreams for the cupbearer and the baker. Okay? The baker's dream, he ends up getting beheaded. He ends up getting killed. That's the basis of it. The cupbearer's dream, it showed Joseph that he was going to be released in 3 days. Okay? And when he was released, Joseph asked him, he said, remember me. Okay? He didn't remember this young man for 2 years. So what do you do when you have the promise of God and you know what's going to happen and your friends forget about you? They don't look out for you. They make it and say, oh, bro, I got you. I'm going to take care of you. And they forget about you. Do you give up? Do you say, you know what, this God thing, I don't even want to do it anymore? But just because you feel like they've forgotten about you does not necessarily mean that is the case. Because all it takes is one person to have something happen in their life and they're like, oh yeah, you know what? I remember April, or I remember so-and-so. Let me find them for you. And that one thing right there can change your life. It can change your life. And that's what happened. 2 years had went by. Nobody even said anything about Joseph. Pharaoh had a couple of dreams that he could not understand. And automatically that cupbearer said, yo, I remember homeboy in prison. He helped me out with this dream. That's all it took. That's all it took. And everything Joseph had been through, he started to understand why he dreamed what he dreamed about his brothers bowing down to him. Because if you're familiar with the story, what happens is he goes to decipher the dreams for Pharaoh. Pharaoh loves him so much. He warns Pharaoh about famine coming to the land in 7 years of harvest. And just go back and read the text. It's actually Genesis 40, 1 through 23, as well as Genesis 39, 1 through 23. But Pharaoh's so happy about it. He makes him ruler over, I can't remember. I think it was not so much the land of Egypt, but just keeping stock and surplus of everything and giving out food and everything that they were doing to prepare for the famine. Joseph was in charge of that. The same Joseph that was sold into slavery by his kinfolk. And brothers and sisters and cousins you think you're so tight with will sell you up the creek. That's what they did to Joseph. He was sold into slavery. He was lied on, thrown into prison, forgotten about. But in the end, he came out on top. Now, the last part of this study is the fact that even though he dreamed a certain dream, he didn't necessarily know what that was going to mean. But because of his faithfulness, because of his consistency and persistence and his perseverance, he accepted what God had for him. He accepted it. It might not be what we want at the time, but he accepted it. When God has something for you, it might necessarily be packaged the way you want it to be. That partner that you've been desiring, you want, they may not be packaged the way you want them to be, but that does not mean that's not what God has for you. That job might not be packaged the way you want it to be. It might be, you might be running a restaurant one day, but you might have to start it as a cashier. It might not be what you think God has for you, or what you think it should look like. But trust me, God is a lot better at making decisions than we are. So he knows what's best for us. He knows what we need. So to recap, throughout Joseph's waiting period, it was in between the dream and the promise, we see that Joseph remained faithful. He remained consistent. He persevered, and then he accepted what God had for him. I'm pretty sure when Pharaoh told him, hey, well, I got you, I'm going to hook you up. I know in the back of his mind, I was like, what, I just really want to go home to my dad, my brothers. I just want to be around them. But at the same time, he's like, you know what? I'm accepting whatever God has for me. Whatever he has for me. And that's the point we have to get. Whatever God's will is, it might not necessarily be what we want. We might think certain things have caused us to lose ourselves, or we've wasted time in different areas. But guess what? All of it is a part of God's plan. Whatever his plan is for your life is all a part of it. But you can't just give up when things are not the way you think they should be. You can't just give up when things are not happening as fast as you think they should be. Let me tell you, I'm going to tell you a little story, and then I'm going to end. But I don't know if you know the story of a bamboo plant. The bamboo plant, it's the sticky little thing, and it sits in water all the time and all that good stuff. Well, the first year the bamboo plant is in existence, it doesn't grow. It doesn't grow at all. Second year, it does not grow. Third year, it does not grow. Fourth year, it does not grow. But that fifth year, it can shoot up to 80 feet. 80 feet. So how many of y'all are in your 4 years getting ready to hit your fifth year, or in your fifth year getting ready to give up on what God has for you? How many of you about to do that? Don't give up. You might be in your 5th year period. And God is getting ready to blow your mind. But you're giving up. Things are disguised in the way that you think they should look, and it's not. It's not. But when you remain faithful, consistent, you persevere, and you block out everything that is not God for your life, and you accept what he has for you, the rewards are endless. So thank you for listening tonight. I hope everyone has a blessed night. Love y'all.